Okay, let's talk about gold and silver. They are on an absolute tear right now, hitting numbers that have the entire financial world doing a double take. I mean, what if I told you the price of gold just blasted past $5,000 an ounce? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly what's behind this incredible rally, and more importantly, what it means for all of us. Let's dive right in.
So first things first, let's get straight to the numbers that are making all the headlines. I mean, these are the figures that are sending some serious shockwaves through the markets.
And here it is. In January of 2026, a single ounce of gold hit $5,266. Wow. That is not just a new record, folks. That is a completely monumental surge that has, frankly, rewritten the entire rulebook. And you know, gold isn't even the whole story. Silver, its often overlooked cousin, has been on an even crazier ride. It's skyrocketed to $114 an ounce. To put that in perspective, that's a mind-blowing 270% gain in just 1 year. Insane. So, this all begs the big question, right? What is actually driving this precious metals frenzy? What kind of powerful forces are at play to push these prices so high, so fast? Well, that is exactly the question we are going to dig into right now. You know, to really understand where we are today, we kind of have to look back. Because as wild as these numbers seem, history actually shows us that precious metals, well, they have a habit of making these kinds of dramatic moves, especially when the world starts to feel a little shaky. And this timeline, it reveals a really fascinating pattern. You see it back in 1980, during the oil crisis and massive inflation, prices spiked. Then again, in 2011, right after the global financial crisis, they spiked again. And now, here we are in 2026, in the middle of a whole new wave of instability, and we are seeing the biggest spike of them all. This table really puts the sheer scale of this thing into perspective. Just look at these nominal peaks. That's the price without adjusting for inflation. Gold hit about $850 in 1980, then $1,900 in 2011. The 2026 peak of over $5,000 just completely dwarfs those past records. And silver's story is just as dramatic, more than doubling its previous all-time highs. Okay, so we've seen the what and the when. Now let's finally get to the why. We can basically break down all the complex forces moving these prices into 3 core drivers. Think of it as the price mover playbook. All right, first up, you've got your classic economic indicators, things like rising inflation and shifting interest rates. Second, there are geopolitical risks, global conflicts, major policy changes. That stuff creates uncertainty, and uncertainty always makes investors very, very nervous. And third, it's the classic story of supply versus demand, which is being supercharged by everything from central banks gobbling up gold to the tech industry's bottomless appetite for silver. Now, this all ties into gold's main job in the modern economy. It's what we call a safe haven asset. Basically, when the markets get choppy and the future looks a little scary, investors run to gold. It's like a financial life raft, trusted to hold its value when everything else is sinking. And hey, don't just take my word for it. As analyst Ariana Chu put it, gold's incredible 65% gain in 2025 was basically a flashing neon sign that investors were desperately searching for a hedge against all the global volatility. But what about silver? This is where things get interesting. Because while it's also a safe haven, silver really has a dual personality. It's also an industrial workhorse. In fact, more than half of all the demand for silver comes not from investors, but from industry. Just look at this chart. It shows you exactly how critical silver is to our modern world. Electronics, solar panels, electric vehicles, they are all absolutely hungry for the stuff. And this insatiable industrial demand is creating a huge supply deficit. Or, to put it simply, we're using silver way faster than we can dig it out of the ground, and that is putting some serious upward pressure on its price. So, okay, prices are soaring, but what does that actually mean for the real world? This isn't just a number flashing on a screen, right? It has very real, tangible ripple effects for literally everyone, from the world's biggest central banks all the way down to you and me. And this right here, this is a total game changer. In 2025, for the first time in modern history, central banks around the globe held more of their reserves in gold than in U.S. Treasury bonds. This is a massive vote of no confidence in the U.S. dollar and a huge signal of a global shift towards what people are calling de-dollarization. It's a trend that could honestly reshape the entire global financial system for decades.
These high prices are creating a really clear divide between winners and losers. On one hand, you have mining companies and commodity-rich emerging markets that are absolutely booming. But on the flip side, jewelers, tech companies, and solar panel makers are getting totally squeezed by these rising costs that will eventually get passed on to consumers like us.
And get this, here's a stat that just shows how wild things have gotten in the background. Mergers and acquisitions, big companies buying smaller ones, in the mining sector exploded by a whopping 380% in 2024. That's a direct result of these prices as everyone rushes to cash in on this new gold rush.
So, with all of this just unprecedented activity, the really big question is, what's next? Where do we go from here? Let's take a quick look at what the experts are saying about the future of precious metals. The general feeling is that these high prices might just be the new normal, at least for a while. Some economists are even predicting gold could hit $6,000. Meanwhile, miners are scrambling to innovate to keep their costs down, jewelers are getting really creative with new materials, and industrial users, well, they're pretty much forced to just absorb the costs, because for a lot of modern technology, silver is simply irreplaceable. And all of this leads to one final, really fascinating question. In our increasingly complex world, are precious metals still that timeless, stable hedge they've always been seen as? Or has their recent, insane volatility turned them into more of a high-stakes gamble? The answer to that question is going to have some pretty profound implications for the global economy for years to come.